Hello, my name is Gene Arnold, and in this presentation, we're going to talk about the topic of when AI goes wrong. We want to discuss what happens when models produce answers that might not be correct and what we can do to help prevent that. The fact is, AI governance is no longer a nice to have. It really has become more of a necessity. And that's the theme of this presentation around AI governance. At the end of the day, there's a huge rapid AI adoption. So the more that AI is being used, the higher risk of important data may be exposed. Well, that's just a reality now. And sadly, failures in AI governance can often end up with some pretty significant issues that we want to try to avoid. AI governance is just incredibly important nowadays. And again, governance is really not a nice to have, it's a necessity, but governance sometimes gets a bad name. Governance isn't about compliance and locking things down. Governance is about setting specific rules on how things can be used, and in this case, data may be exposed. And when you know what those rules are, you can actually scale faster and far more responsibly. If you know how to use the data in a responsible way, and this is approved and governed properly, then there's no threat exposing it, right? Because you have governance and you understand the proper rules to use your data. And by doing that, you can now use your data in different AI plans and agents and all kinds of different strategies because it's properly governed. Let's talk about some situations that didn't go too well, all right? And that'll probably help tie things together here nicely. We're going to talk about Amazon's AI hiring tool. Unfortunately, it didn't go over too well. And the issue was historically, women were not always treated fairly in the business world, in the hiring process. It was definitely a more male-dominated area, and models were trained on past history. So because of that, if you take a look at some of the stats over here, or some of the information, words like, women's, or, maybe they were part of the women's chess club, when these terms were used in resumes, the model would look at these resumes and automatically say, well, this person's probably not a correct fit. But it's not right? The model never got a chance to really learn more about the particular individual, whether that person is a male or female. They both are just as qualified for a position, but this particular tool did not give women a fair chance, which was completely incorrect. Now, what could have helped with this? Things like data lineage, knowing exactly what data sets were being used to train these models. By knowing that, you can help figure out, well, were these data sets biased in any way? When the model was released, there should have been better checks and balances to make sure it was working correctly. And of course, knowing the metadata owners, the stewards of this data, would have helped, because you could have had conversations on whether the data was tested properly. Bottom line, there needed to be more clarity on the data that was being used. Was it governed properly before the model was even trained on this information? We've got two more examples I want to show you real quick before I actually go into how we'll present some possible ways to help prevent things like this. So if we take a look at Babylon Health, the situation here was that the organization had created, this up here a little bit over here out of the way, the organization had created a tool to help with healthcare. But unfortunately, they had felt that the model was giving diagnosis that were just at the same level of a doctor. Let's say it that way, equivalent to a human doctor, and it just wasn't the case. Unfortunately, they were overpromising what the model could provide in the way of healthcare, and it wasn't actually audited correctly to know if the solutions that we're offering were really that accurate. There was very little testing, right? Again, Where was the lineage? Where was the data that was being used to understand how we should answer a particular human's question? If someone's sick, they're feeling these certain symptoms, how are they supposed to be handled properly? Where were the checks and balances? Babylon had a tough time with this one. And we'll do another example over here with Clearview. This one's a little bit different. This is also, but just as important, the fact is, when a model is trained, it's trained on quite a bit of data. Now, in this situation, Clearview AI, they were using images without proper consent. So they were training their models on data that they didn't have legal consent to do that with. And that was not a good thing. So because of that, there was a lot of issues, right? There was no data source transparency. They didn't fully understand where the data was coming from and was that data properly licensed. You can't just train models on data that you don't have the rights to train with. That was Clearview's situation. So these are just 3 quick examples. We're going to get into some more details on how to work with situations like this. But rather than focusing completely on just things that go wrong, I kind of want to spin it the other way now and talk about how Atlan can help with these different situations. So you've heard me say lineage a couple times. Right? We talked about this before, right? Amazon had these issues, right? And end-to-end lineage would have been very helpful to understand where the data came from. And by doing that, you'd have a better understanding of what data is being used in specific situations. So here's a great example of that. Here is a view of lineage inside of Atlan. And I did specifically pick an example with quite a bit of lineage, but what you're seeing here is a specific table, and you're seeing all of the upstream information, okay? So you're seeing where the data came from and the different transformation tools along the way. Okay, you can even drill into these transformation tools and take a look at SQL statements on how the data was transformed and where it's coming. You can get quite a bit of detailed information. And notice as I continue to go over here to the left, you'll see even that the icons will start to change because data can be coming from different places and feeding into the table that you want to learn more about. This is very important because this is helping you understand where your data is coming from. And I can open up the sidebar. I can click on any of these items and learn more about that specific piece of data. Now, we go the other way as well. This would be considered upstream. Now we'll go downstream, and I can see what is being fed this table, right? What data is being used from this table into other areas of my data estate, things like models, reports, maybe other tables. So using Atlan's lineage, you'll get a full view of where the data came from and is going when you're looking at a particular object. Now let's talk about things like certification and monitoring, ongoing AI assurance of your data. If we take a look at this same table but in a different view, what you're seeing here right now, specific details about this particular table. You'll see right here that it's verified by the business. Okay, verified that it can be used. That's great. Though, even though it's verified, apparently there are some data quality issues with the data. And this can happen just because something is verified by the business. That might mean that certain criteria have been met, but there still could be issues with the quality of the data. Luckily, Atlan can pick up on that and let people know. In fact, I can actually click right into the data quality section of this area of the screen and take a look at all the different rules that are running, which ones passed, which ones failed. So this is giving me a very good understanding of the quality of the data, whether the data is certified, verified to be used, before I even train a model on it. I can come here and understand, all right, I want to use this type of data. Is it verified to be used? And is it of good quality? And by knowing that, I can trust what the model will then be trained on. How about policies? How are you governing your data, right? What are your compliance guardrails? Well, Atlan has that right in the product as well. So we do have a centralized policy management center that I'm going to take you to right now. So here's our policy center. And this is where you'll be able to create various different policies, maybe data retention policies or policies around personal data quality standards. So what's great about these policies is that they're able to be designed to be flexible. So I can understand what the policy is all about, the purpose of this specific policy. Are there terms that help define this policy? I can learn all about that here. But what I really like is the scope and rules. This particular policy is saying that if the data meets this particular scope, it should be attached to this particular policy. And I can take a look at which assets are falling into this policy, right? And I can also then take a look at maybe what data is not in this policy. So I can fix that data so that it would be within this particular policy because I want to use the data in a certain way, but I want to make sure it's governed properly. So there's an entire policy center here inside of Atlan that'll help you govern the data and make sure all the criteria in that data is properly met. You'll also be able to learn things like tagging. Okay, so is this confidential data? If it is, maybe it shouldn't be used in certain ways. All this information is available outside of Atlan as well. So if you attach models to this data, you can have models ask Atlan, is this confidential data before it even uses it? So having all this information inside of Atlan can help your model understand how to properly use the data. Perfect. Now, what about understanding who is the subject matter expert or maybe the steward of a particular piece of data? If we come back here again to this table, master sales and invoices, I can take a look at who the owners are of this data, right? I can take a look at stakeholders. I easily know who to speak to if I have any questions about this data. And if I do have any questions, I can simply come over here and start up a Slack conversation directly inside of Atlan. Maybe start up Microsoft Teams conversation. You'll see all that information is cataloged here as well. So I can keep these conversations in Atlan. If I want to see what people are talking about, it's all here. So not only do I know who to talk to, I can start the conversation right here. And if there are issues with the data, I can go in here to Jira or ServiceNow and even spin up a ticket. Now, all of this is very important because you need to make sure that you understand who to talk to if you have a question about the data before you use it. You have to have proper knowledge about the data before you use it. And if it's challenging to find these people to talk to, you might skip a step, and that's not good. With Atlan, everything's cataloged, you know who to talk to, and starting a conversation is literally just a click of the mouse, and you can start to talk to someone. Now, what about AI itself? Does Atlan catalog AI models and apps? Well, it certainly does. So let me take you over to that area of the product, which is very powerful. I actually really like this area quite a bit because it takes you away from just databases and now takes you into literally the AI world and cataloging that information, which is here in our AI governance center. And what you're looking at right now are the various apps and models that the product is currently cataloging. We're going to take a look at a model right here. And what you're learning about is metadata about the model, okay? AI efficacy, right? Is it an ethical AI model? How it can be properly used? I can learn about just README information. I can learn quite a bit about it. In fact, I can look at the data sets that the data sets that were used to help train the model. And I actually like this view a little bit better than the data set view because you can really see all the different data sets and how they're being used. So not only are we governing the model, we're helping you understand how the model was trained and what data was being used. And then I can come over here and say, okay, well, are there any applications that are using this model? Yeah, there are. The internal chatbot is using this model. And if you want to learn more about this AI application, I can just click on it. And now I'm looking at an AI model, or no, I'm sorry, an AI app that's cataloged inside of Atlan. And from here, I can take a look at, again, the linked assets that are being used for this particular application, the data, no surprise, the lineage, which is going to go back to the different models that were being used to train the application, as you would expect. This particular one that we brought up earlier is there. And we can learn more about not only the actual app, but what models are used to help this app work, all right here inside of Atlan. So this is really powerful because now you can have a better understanding of, hey, what models does my organization have? Who do I talk to if I want to use them? How are they being used? What apps do we have at our organization? And are they internal? Are they external? What data are they being used? What data are they using to do their job? Everything is cataloged here inside of Atlan. Now, not only is this information all cataloged inside of Atlan, it's also all available outside of Atlan as well. And that's going to be our metadata lakehouse. The metadata lakehouse allows you to take all the information that's inside of Atlan and use it in other aspects of your organization. Let me just show you an example of that. Our metadata lakehouse is a new offering. It's actually quite powerful indeed, because everything that we've looked at so far, every single piece of data is available to be used externally now. Let's just take a look at a quick Sigma report. Now this report has a bunch of different information. It's just saying, hey, show me all the storage utilization information. Maybe you're looking to prune down your data. You want to take a look at the largest tables that you have in your organization, but you want to take a look at them by popularity score because you might want to trim down some information, or maybe you need some information around data migration and you want to use this for that. Great. But let's bring it back to AI and let's talk about things like compliance. For compliance reasons, all tables and views must have tags, otherwise they'll be marked for deletion. Why? Because if something's not properly tagged, is it PII? I don't know. It wasn't tagged properly. So you need this information because your governance rules that you may use to enforce your models, or at least the data that's going to be used for these models to be trained on, or think of it as maybe a RAG that you're going to attach this data to a model so the model can speak to this data and get more information. If it's not properly governed, if there's not specific tags, policies, specific custom fields that aren't filled in, how is the model supposed to know? Well, luckily, everything inside of Atlan is available for you to learn about in various reports, or, and it even gets better, you can use all this information in tools like Databricks. We can go and use this inside of Genie Spaces or Databricks 1, where you can go in here and chat and ask questions. And the same thing with Snowflake Intelligence. In fact, let me show you a quick example of this. Here is a chat I had with Snowflake Intelligence. Very simple, using the company's average order rate KPI. Give me details about bronze sales. Now, notice that this doesn't have anything about SQL or numbers. I mean, this is me talking. So if I was talking to a human, he or she would have to know how we calculate this and where to get the data from. Bronze sales, what's bronze sales? That could be anywhere. Or they'd have to go and research it. Well, the same thing with the model. It has to know what these mean, and it has to know where to get the data. But luckily, having Atlan's metadata lakehouse attached to these different intelligence tools, it can say, hey, okay, based on bronze sales data, because that's what's attached to this particular agent, I know where to go. I can look at Atlan to find out what the SQL query is, what the calculation is being, how the calculation is being done, and then give you proper information. Think of an example of like, I need my Q1 sales numbers. What's Q1? When does your financial year start? Does it start in January? Does it start in February? It can depend on organization. So just saying Q1 isn't very clear. So that's where the whole idea of semantic information is very powerful, and Atlan has all of that information. And notice when I scroll down, now Snowflake does a really great job presenting all of this, but it also offers me the ability to ask more questions. How does my company explain this KPI? Well, according to your company's glossary, and here's the definition. This is pulled directly from Atlan. This is a quote directly from Atlan. Snowflake or Databricks, neither would know about this without a catalog attached to it. So by using our metadata lakehouse, we're able to educate models and explain to them how to calculate numbers, where to find the data, and give you definitions of how the data is being used. And lastly, of course, I did kind of touch on this a little bit a moment ago, semantic context in action. The semantic view is a very popular term nowadays. It could be called semantic view, semantic layer. Everyone's calling it something slightly different, but semantic seems to be a standard in the sense that you need to help a model better understand how to answer a question. All right. If I ask a model, what's the weather? It would know how to answer that. Okay. It might need to know semantic information like, okay, well, Gene lives in New Jersey. I'm going to think that he means that because I was given that semantic information about the person that's talking to me right now. I need to figure out a term. I need to figure out how two tables are joined together. That's all in the semantic layer. Now, Atlan knows all of this. So Atlan can compile and offer and keep up to date this semantic view so that models are always aware of how to properly get information and answer questions. I know that that was quite a bit, but I hope it was very helpful. This is just a very important topic for me because AI is amazing, but AI needs to be accurate. And to be accurate, it really needs to be governed properly. And luckily, Atlan has some great tools to help with that. If you have any questions, just put them here on the video. I'll be happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching the video and have a great day.